do you need anything from us? Are you going to have to drop out?
I'm going to have to drop out. The chances are that compensation is going to come up, and that's my main priority. So yeah, this got kind of scheduled on top of everything. So.
Okay, so welcome for as long as you can attend, and just feel free to drop away as you need to. No problem.
Thanks. I'm really sorry about that. I was looking forward to this.
That's okay. You can read the write-up post. Would it be useful if we recorded this session?
I am recording.
Wonderful. Okay then. I have modified the agenda just ever so slightly. I noticed some people have done some prep and others haven't, so that's absolutely fine. But I've made some additional time in the agenda. So what I thought we might do is start off with a quick check-in, and I guess the opening question for the check-in is, what is the one thing that you need from us today? I'm going to nominate Kate to start. And Kate, when you're done, do you want to nominate the next person?
So what is one thing I need from this call or today? One thing I need from this call is just to try to make sense of, I feel like I'm wearing like different hats within this. Like, is the team like the inspirally greater than team that I deliver work with, or is it this DNA team that I'm kind of half in, half out, and how then am I thinking about the retro in the context of that question? So a little bit more clarity on that's informed some of my tickets and how I'm thinking about it. So perhaps I could just, if you give me some clarity on how to approach it from the beginning, that would be helpful. Thank you. And please go, Sam.
My need from this call is to come to a collective consensus on how we're going to move forward and what's the next iteration of these programs.
Would you like to nominate someone, Sam?
And I nominate Joshua.
Cool. My need is mostly just to sense check the work that's been going on, then get a sense of what's been in alignment, what hasn't. And mostly what I would like is, more context or direction about the wider needs in the ecosystem, and use that to inform the next round of offerings. And I'll go with Sarah.
Sure. Thanks, Joshua. My needs are to, I guess, collective sense make as well, and see what our next steps are and what the opportunities are to fill our needs as well as your needs.
Thanks, Sarah. Who would you like to
I passed along to Susan.
Thanks, everybody. My needs are, I guess, reflected in what everybody else is saying. I think that I've got a need to continually model doing these feedback loops and these reflections. And thanks, Mary, for offering to host us today. I also think that in this time of increased complexity in the mesh, when we can do rituals like this that can kind of help us to see the wood for the trees, I think it's emotionally positive for me. So I'm just grateful to be here. Thanks. Will.
It's collective sense make with a specific question is, what is the sense of, are people changing behaviors when they go through the course? Like, is it changing the way that teams are operating? Are teams making better decisions? That's my main question, is what the output has been in terms of people's actions.
That's wonderful. Great question. Okay, thanks, Will. So what I will invite you guys to do now, is everybody on the Trello board? Just a sort of a hygiene. Yeah, awesome.
Can you just pop the link in the chat? Sorry, Mary, I'm not quite there yet.
Sure. Just bear with me for one moment. There you go, Susan. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind just opening what to expect during and after this retrospective, and maybe we'll just quickly go through the agenda. So thank you for your check-in. very insightful. Basically, we're going to have, as a sort of an overview of the process, some downtime and quiet time mixed with some reflection time, mixed with some time together discussing. The aim by the time we get to the end of this session is that we have a clear, concise set of maybe recommendations or actions. Actions would be a really, really good output of this session. I would like you, as we sort of move into the reflection space, to think about the context that Will in particular has just set and the question that is top of mind in terms of, well, what's actually happening off the back of this training that's been undertaken. Susan, I was going to invite you to just sort of set the context. Thank you for putting together the timeline. As Susan is taking us through the timeline, please feel free to jump in with anything else that you remember. This is a collective memory that we're trying to sort of gain here. And we will finish promptly when the time is up. Do you have any questions about the agenda? Any concerns?
Mary, how are you harvesting, and what's the artifact from this going to be?
Yeah, so we will be collecting the boards together. So the harvest will be collected on the board. As we go through the stages of the agenda, we will look at themes. We will look at what's sort of naturally falling out as actions. I think it would be a great idea when we identify the improvements. I'd like to do a little bit of root cause analysis and understand why, what's actually underlying, what is the root cause of these issues, so that we can come up with the right solution as opposed to what's in front of our face. And so that will emerge, Susan, as we go. I will, in the downtime, be preparing the board ahead of us as people are working on the board. So Susan, would you like to maybe just start by taking us through the timeline, if it's helpful for you to share it with us as you talk to it?
Could you maybe just share it on your screen for a second? I'll talk.
I sure can. Just bear with me for one moment. Okay.
Thanks, Mary.
No problem. There we go.
Oh, it doesn't look like anybody added anything to this. It's written, basically been pretty straightforward. Sort of late April, May, I started chatting with my friend Sean, and he basically was reflecting with me that on his team of decentralized developers who had never met each other, accountability and commitments was a difficult thing for that team. I gave him a few little suggestions about things he could try in terms of getting some agreements together. He rang me back a couple days later and said, that was brilliant, and I'd love you to talk to the head of my spoke, Igor. And that conversation with Igor led me to the careers page. And I did something I haven't done in 10 years, which was couple together a CV, and that led, I think, Will to actually finding my CV amongst some things, flagging it to Jason E, who's in the talent team, and conversations started there. So I had my first couple of conversations and made the effort to go to New York in June to meet Sarah. So I met Sarah and Samantha and Carol at Bogart. Sam and I didn't, we just had like a handshake, and same with Carol, but Sarah and I spent a couple of sessions together, just getting to know each other and for me to get to know the project. After I left New York, I was in Spain with Joshua and Kate, and that's when we started talking about sensing into what could be possible if we made a proposal to the mesh that was different than just straight consultants coming in or me applying for a full-time role. What could it look like if we could test one of my theories, which is the change to what could be possible in a different kind of organization is brought about by and through community. And so we started to scheme around that. And in the middle of that, I was also having other calls. So had, I don't know, I think a total of 12 or 13 different interviews we put together the project, and then the statement of work, started working on the statement of work with Will. And yeah, by the end of July, it was all flowing. I came to San Francisco at the end of July, first week in August, for our first kind of DNA team offsite. And off the back of that, the contract got signed. We planned the first programs and started the process of the sense-making calls with the humans in the mesh. I think we had over not quite 100 responses, maybe 85 responses. We ended up having 68 conversations, and that really informed specifically Kate and myself in how we wanted to adapt the previously designed curriculum for practical self-management to SO 101. You know, very clear that we were going to run pilots to make sure that we were testing and checking and getting that feedback before actually launching. So we did both of the pilot projects of Team Foundations and SO 101 in September. Joshua and the Team Foundations found really quickly that it was a great opportunity to do both mixed cohorts where 2 or 3 people from Team Bespoke came along and were able to go through the process with other representatives, and then equally First Diligence and now MetaMask specifically with Uport and the talent team in the wings doing the intensive Team Foundations course with just the single spokes or teams. We did the launch of the SO 101 proper, and now we're into cohorts 2 and 3. I created and I sent to all of you the alumni list. So now between Team Foundations and alumni, we've got over almost 100 people in the mesh that we've actually touched with this training, and that's not even including those who have attended the dojos and have were part of the initial process with the interviews. Yeah, I really appreciate Sam encouraging and leading out on the SO Dojo project and being able to do time-sensitive, geography appropriate conversations that tend to be smaller, more focused, and I think probably more powerful in APAC and Europe has been really, really great. And then, yeah, so just really at the point now where I feel like we're sinking into in advance of next week when the DNA team gets together to plan out the work for the next quarter. I think we've got some really great kind of cornerstones and pillars to build out on. Yeah, that's kind of all I have to say. Yeah, like obviously disappointing that the conversation with Fred has delayed, but I think that that's appropriate, and the other conversations that have been sparked off as a result of Consensus 2.0 feels obviously scary, but also positive. And yeah, so did I miss anything out on the timeline? Sorry if that was a little rambly, but I really appreciated the exercise and to be able to document this, Mary.
Thank you. Sam, you have a question.
Oh no, the only thing that's missing from the timeline that I see are like some of the marketing content, like the communications that we sent out to drive people into some of these meetings. So like the SO Dojo email, the email about interviews, and I can add those all in there myself, but I think that those are also important milestones because that was a huge draw to awareness of that these programs were available.
Yeah, totally agree, Sam. Thanks.
That's awesome, Sam. Can you just in your own time, whenever you get a chance, just add whatever other additional information that you would like to this timeline, which hopefully will continue to live on. I'm going to stop sharing now and move along to the next. Thank you, Susan. That was really helpful. Moving on to the next stage of the agenda. So what I was wanting to do now is basically, for those of you who've already added cards, thank you very much for taking the time to sort of think about and do some prep. For those of you who've already got cards, could you maybe start by just adding your face to the card so we can see who's actually who we're attributing the thinking to. And then what we're going to do now is spend sort of 10 minutes. If we're done sooner, that's fine, but I'm sort of giving us a bit of space to think about these questions. And again, try to hold in your mind Will's question around what impact this is actually having. Are the team behaviors changing? And reflect on that as you sort of go through and answer the questions. Let me just very quickly share for one moment so that I can illustrate and move this over here. So really the questions to answer is, what did we do well? You'll notice that Kate and others have already been in and sort of just off the top of their head. What challenged you through the sort of the last 4 months? And thinking about what challenged you, can you think about what actually enabled you to pull together as a team and recover from that? Also thinking back, if we were to start again, going back 4 months ago, what would we do differently? And what would we do more of? So we'll start with just this, maybe 10 minutes, everybody on silent. I will go on silent. I'll stop sharing and just give you time to think about this. Once you've done one pass of the board, can you go back and read other people's comments? If you agree with their comments, will you add your face to their card? Any questions?
Sorry, the Wi-Fi keeps going out in here, so I might have to stop my video for bandwidth reasons, but we're just adding our faces to the cards that we wrote, right?
Add your face to the card that you wrote, then have a read of other people's cards. If you agree with their comments, add your face to their card. Yeah? Great. If it would be helpful for you to just lose your video so you can have some quiet time, that's absolutely cool.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Mary, does it make sense to us to like maybe add a question or something to somebody's card, just if we have wanted to get more detail on that, or what's our way to do that?
I think maybe for now, just keep that a note, and then when we get into the group discussion, we have rooms to answer questions. Yeah, thanks, Will.
Mary, are we able to add anything, or is
Yeah, please, as you read other people's, as more emergent ideas come, please just keep adding cards as things occur to you. So just doing a sense check on timing. 3 more minutes. Okay, how are we doing? 1 more minute?
Yeah, I could definitely use 1 more minute. I'm just going back and putting my names on the ones that I like.
Have 2. Have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Mary.
Unfortunately, I have to drop. Apologies, folks.
That's
But,
all good. Well, thank you. Thank
yeah,
you for
I'll
coming.
check in on the outcome. Yeah, I'll check in on the outcome afterwards. Okay, great.
All right. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Bye, Will.
Okay. If you'd all like to rejoin us, I'm turning your video on.
Oops, I didn't mean.
Sarah, I'm guessing you might want to leave your video off if your Wi-Fi is a little bit weak there. Okay, so moving on to the board then, and exploring the themes. What did we notice?
That I love doing retros because always stuff comes up that I haven't thought about.
Yes. Any other reflections?
It probably highlighted the gap between Team Foundations and SO101 for me a bit, in that they just felt like quite separate pillars in the offerings and in the thinking.
Awesome. And if we were to sort of explore maybe themes so that we can kind of group this content, any obvious themes emerging here?
I mean, for me, the obvious theme in this, again, I might just be biased, like around sort of the back end construct of like, where do we, like all of the kind of back end infrastructure-y stuff that will make it easier to do things like have stuff all in one place, or to record attendees or follow
So
up.
sort of scaffolding the process?
No, it's not so much the process. It's more that like the admin and the logistics.
So the back end management of the participants and the intake funnel. I just realized also that Claudia isn't on this meeting.
I invited her. She declined.
Yeah, Claudia declined, unfortunately.
Okay. But if this discussion is getting recorded, so it's good.
So we've got admin and logistics. Any other themes emerging?
I mean, if a leading driving question is around outputs and metrics, I mean, we only really have qualitative, like, in-house feedback from participants, which we did a lot of feedback in all of the SO101s, but it could be something like another way to actually get what has changed, or what is this actually effect this has had in your life. And I don't know if I think you made a card on that, Josh, something around wanting to know earlier about what metrics to collect, because I don't think we have the information. And I think for the team, for DNA, and also for the trainings, that would be really good. And I'm seeing that card come up a little bit, which is good.
So metrics and measurements, would that be a reasonable way to sort of summarize that? Yeah. Okay, cool. Any other themes?
I'd probably say one around what happens after the initial engagement, the what next, or the how do we keep people together, or the how do we keep doing things, I think is a theme I noticed.
Would you be happy to describe that as momentum or maintaining momentum?
Sure.
Cool, thanks. Any other themes?
One, the one theme would be like the mesh is challenging and the mesh is what it is. I saw a lot of the challenges were kind of things which were just, that's the nature of the engagement. And so that was one theme I noticed in particularly a lot of the challenges.
And how would you summarize that, Josh?
I'd say the mesh is what it is, or the mesh is challenging, would be the summary that I had on it.
Challenging mesh. What's coming through for you, Sarah?
I guess the theme for me is just being really grateful for like the self-organizing team really self-organizing around this. So, you know, Joshua taking up team engagements and running with it. You know, I know, you know, and Susan and Kate and Lisa really pushing forward the SO curriculum and really being clear on what they need. You know, like, did we deliver on all those needs perfectly? No, but we can improve on it. But yeah, just feeling that's a theme for me.
So if we described that as sort of self-organizing in practice, would that capture it?
Yes, yes, and I guess the specific things I would say would be like clarity on needs and taking the initiative, and yeah, but also being flexible and understanding with our, you know, crazy, messy group.
Awesome, thank you. Samantha, anything else that you would add?
No, I think that everybody touched on everything that I was going to say.
Okay, so if there's no other obvious themes emerging, could I now ask you to go back into the board again one more time and collectively and silently as a group just organize the board according to the themes. So if I just share my screen for one moment and I'll show you what I have done and what I mean. So you'll see I've created labels here. What you can now do is go into your card, and depending on what is a relevant label, say for example, admin and logistics, which I'm going to delete because it isn't. If I can remember how, please ignore me, admin. So if we could just quickly run through the board together, self-organize however you wish. Hint, you might take a column each, for example, but I'll leave it to you guys. We'll spend maybe 3 to 5 minutes just organizing our thoughts kind of into these structures and themes. Any questions?
Just to repeat back for clarity, are we just going through and coding by the colors?
Yep, yep.
In a self-organized way. Okay, great. Thanks.
Cool, thank you.
Mary, can they have more than one label? I've already, like the first one I did, I feel like had more than one. Or do you want it to be prioritized by the one that's most relevant?
We can filter them using whichever label we prefer. So I think, you know, if there are multiple themes, that's absolutely fine.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, one more minute. Okay. So now we're going to spend probably about 15 minutes just sort of in conversation together, sort of sensing the work that's emerging. Obviously, one of the outputs we really are trying to achieve is this real sense of not just the celebration of what we've done well, which is really important, but what learning are we taking into the next 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, so that we're really crystal clear as a team how we mobilize and what we're mobilizing around. Does that make sense? So I'll just listen and harvest, but what I would invite you to now do is, if somebody would like to start us off, what's emerging for you, particularly in the challenges space? Are you seeing any recurring patterns that maybe need shifting?
I think there's a couple there. One around challenges being faced by maybe participants and needs not being met, or expectations around needs from facilitators and trainers around organization, logistics, admin. So like there's a theme around streamlining and aligning so that there's a better process for getting that work done at the back end, while enabling at the front end to really focus on the experience of participants, marketing it so that there's more engagement. Does that make sense, Mary?
Yeah, it does. And so if sort of the challenges being faced by participants around the admin and the setup, why is that an issue?
What, and coaches, I think.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think that's currently an issue, both to Kate and to the room?
Yeah, my sense is that some of the stuff which has been labelled like admin and logistics isn't, and that it really comes down to where are the competencies of the team, and where are their happy places in work. And I'd say that systems, processes, promotion, selling, and marketing would be two areas where there's less people in their happy place in that work. And that I think, for example, seeing Sam's ticket of like, oh, the promotional emails weren't on the timeline. Whereas I think that's just a highlight of where we don't see things as much. And I know for myself, my happy place is definitely when I have someone else doing the promoting and the marketing and someone else doing the logistics. And then that's when I feel most happy in my work. And so I think that's, I don't know if I'm projecting more of my biases across the whole sort of delivery team, but I think that might be why those gaps are there.
Yeah, I echo that. More so on the logistics administration side, rather I'm happy doing marketing promotion, but that's where my skills just do not stretch to. So yeah.
And it also, I think the other piece of evidence for me is that, oh yeah, we don't have a page where people can go and say, this is what Foundations looks like, or this is what 101 looks like, and here's where I can sign up, and here's where the waiting list is. And like all of that was simple promotional work, I would call, is something that hasn't been done yet. And yeah, so it's another part.
And why would you say that work hasn't been done, Josh?
I would say that to me, I feel like some of it's a natural evolution of things. For example, I think the thing I've loved the most about our work has been that we took our time and we didn't go in blindly with an offering. And so I didn't know what Team Foundation's offering would look like 2 months ago. I've formed an opinion over what it looks like over the course of building it and prototyping it. So I wouldn't have known what to put on a marketing page 2-3 months ago. And so I think that's one big reason. And I see Sarah's comment about, oh, cool, that marketing page is going up. So at least that need has been communicated, and the DNA team are supporting that in some way. So it might be it's not an issue and it's just under control.
So you're kind of describing an emergent future, and I guess putting in place scaffolding that reflects the emergent nature of it, rather than planning and doing up front and then having to redo. You're sort of sensing through it and then producing content as needed, just in time.
I think I would add to that, though, to say that one thing that I found challenging is a bit of a consensus meme around things having to be perfect before they go up, which is not my normal practice. And so, yeah, I think that's been a little bit challenging for me to almost like having to wait until the right people are available to build the thing that looks exactly perfect so that we can get it up. So, in retrospect, if I think about it, especially reflecting on what JB just shared, it probably isn't a terrible thing that wasn't done 2 or 3 months ago. But I think very much that that should be a focus of what comes next. And I think that in addition to having that one kind of landing page or place where people can go really quickly and see what the things are and so that they can sign up, for me, it's also how we're going to build out this practice to be attractive and engaging for people at all levels, at all times, whether or not they're signing up for a class. Yeah, sorry, I might be getting off track now.
What I hear there, Susan, for me is that I describe that as the biggest challenge of this work. Like if we did everything, a lot of stuff like the marketing and the logistics and so on, I think we can solve with just a little bit of attention. But the complexity of actually solving meaningful change in spokes and meaningful change in teams, I think is that's the hard part of this, and that's what's going to need lots and lots of attention.
Okay, so Josh, just hold that thought for one moment, because that's perfect. Susan, you mentioned this consensus meme of things needing to be perfect before they go out. So if we're dealing in a complex environment where, the future emerges, where does that sense of, where is that feeling coming from, or that consensus meme as you describe? And maybe Sarah and Sam would like to sort of comment and give some insights on this.
Can I just maybe slightly amend that around perfection and maybe drive it more towards, and maybe this isn't something consensus wide, maybe it's just something on the DNA team where it's like every single fucking person has to have an opinion.
Okay, so that's different. Yeah.
I think I feel like it's a bit of both.
Okay, I'm going to note both of those down. Can we sort of continue the exploration on this? Where's that behavior coming from? What's the root cause of that, do we think?
I think it really has to do with the attention economy, right? And so I'm not saying that it's a negative always. I mean, it's frustrating for somebody like me who's got this bias to action. But I do appreciate the kind of challenge to that sometimes, because the attention economy is so precious that you only kind of get one shot at this, I think, is some of that thinking. I'm not sure I fully believe that, but when you're asking me about the sense, about where I feel it, I feel like it's like, we only have one chance. This is so critical. We've only got one chance to get it right. Yeah, I feel like that's where that kind of push, like holding back, is coming from.
Sam and Sarah, what are your thoughts?
think on that note, it's interesting because I was having a conversation with Chris and Will and Rob a couple of days ago, and this is something that came up at our Sonoma offsite, but this idea that like we've almost missed our time frame, and like DNA has almost missed its time frame to perform what it needs to perform for consensus, and I think that that's really one of the frustrations, or around this. Around the challenges that we currently are having, because the question is, where is it that we should be focusing our attention and our resources, and what are the impacts? Because with this consensus 2.0 and a massive shift and restructure of the company, there's a lot of attention now on the work that we're going to be doing with SO. And sorry, I'm getting a little tangential, but yeah, I don't know. Those are just thoughts.
Tangential is good. It's good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Could talk about it for days. Yeah, I personally feel like there's a lot of pressure now on us to like perform.
Sorry, Sam, you're breaking up just ever so slightly there. Would you just mind repeating your last couple of phrases? Because I think we lost you.
Sorry, yeah, the Wi-Fi is really not good today. I said I just think that now with this pivot to consensus 2.0.
Sorry,
the metrics. Shoot.
Sam, do you want to type your comments maybe into the chat or create a card on Trello? Because I feel like we're missing some gold.
Yeah, I can create a card. Sorry.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, sure. I can comment on what Susan brought up around like perfection and like everyone has to have an opinion before we move something forward, and attention economy. So I totally hear also what Sam is bringing to the table around, yeah, we're missing our time frame to do what we need to do at consensus. Yeah, I think there's a couple things that I beg to understand the root causes of a lot of that. When I hear we're missing our time frame to perform what we need to do at consensus, I have two questions. Well, one comment and another question is, the comment is, I've been hearing this since summer of 2017. We're missing our window to perform. So I don't know if for me personally it has less weight because I just hear it all the time. The second is, there's something inherent in there is that we need to do something for someone else. So we're, I hesitate to take the position of what traditional L&D functions and HR organizations do, which is take responsibility for fixing other people's problems, right? So I think there's, I just want to say a little, just question our us versus them, or it's like we have to go fix or help everybody else, and that's our only purpose. And these are just questions that come up that I'd like to explore in terms of root cause. And then the next thing is on the missing the time frame is, so it's interesting because we don't have the systems here at Consensus to move resources, to be agile in changing our focuses, and or make capital allocation decisions in an agile or flexible way that's repeatable. So we do have actual constraints that we go up against. We can say, oh, we need to scale and move this faster and faster and faster, but we have a few contracts with external partners, and those took months to get into play, and those processes aren't necessarily repeatable. So I think also another piece, and this is the last one, I'll stop on my soliloquy. But the last piece is consensus has it deep in its culture that the consensus-based decision-making process, which is everyone needs to agree before we move forward on everything. And, I think it's less about perfection, Susan, and more of like, we all need to agree. And if we move forward, we are worried about the retribution or pushback we face for making a decision. So I guess I should only speak from the I there, but yeah, I think those are all like factors that are coming into play culturally. And then, as a team grows, you can't you can't have everyone involved in everything, but we still continue to have everyone involved in everything. Gets quite complex.
Okay, that's really awesome, Sarah. And I'm sort of hearing, I think I'm hearing maybe a little bit of root cause mixed in with
trying.
With some of the challenges. Could we just explore just a little bit more, because I'm really curious. This meme that's spreading, we're running out of time. What's that about? Where is it coming from? Any thoughts? What have you observed? Who are you hearing it from?
Well, the general shift of the company is changing.
Yeah, as you're moving sort of towards the 2.0.
And that was the first 2.5 years of the company. And now it's restructuring towards a top-down goal to restructure towards revenue-generating projects. And, our job will be to make sure that, having a look at teams and brings into question, are teams working well and making good decisions together that are in line with the values that this company was started on. And then that's going to build into criteria for performance evaluation and funding, which goes into the comment that I made in the other comments page. But, there's been a lot of autonomy given towards us. And I think that now leadership is going to look purely at like numbers and impact. And so that's my, I'm just being really blunt and honest with like the conversations that are going on from. Go ahead, Kate.
Can I ask a blunt question?
Sure.
What, like, from your instincts so far, even though these conversations about, consensus 2.0 and are happening, and like it may be like this mix of dynamic hierarchy and self-organization, and there's a move towards revenue and numbers and metrics, and obviously it's understandable given market conditions. What are you sensing around what DNA is delivering, and like what you can put your name to in terms of, or our name to, I'll use the our, in terms of metrics, and like what makes you feel good, or like, okay, we have done this, or like, and what would, sorry, Miriam, I'm taking over. But that's the question that was coming up for me.
All good.
Like, what would make me feel good personally? Like, what do I think that we need to do? And this is just
past-based first. What can you be like? Okay, we've done this, or like, and then what more needs to happen, which is actually going into some of the topics of this retro.
So what has the DNA team done? We are pursuing putting in the structures in place to be able to allocate capital and information flow around the company at like a system level. We're helping teams to formulate their governance systems. We're arming people with skills, or at least introducing them to the skills that are necessary for like self-organizing. And that's why we've done our communication program. On helping teams. We started with the hypothesis around agile, and training teams in agile and helping them gain traction. And now self-organizing is really taking a holistic look at like what makes a team work. For me, it keeps going. I keep going back to this thing the past few weeks. I don't even care if it's called self-organization. To me, it's like anyone can join the Self-Organizing 101 or the Team Foundation, whether they want to have an explicit hierarchical, like, I'm the manager and I make all the decisions. Like, the team still has to decide how they want to make all the decisions together. It doesn't matter if it's called self-organizing or anything. So I think bringing you guys on has been pivotal in helping create the space for teams to actually have these conversations and prioritize the need to look at how they operate and know that it's on them to build out their systems. And it's a process of collaboration and deep personal reflection. So those are, I think they're big accomplishments. I would say we haven't really quantified or reflected properly on them yet.
Well, that's a nice segue into maybe let's reflect on some of the stuff that we are doing well and that where we have achieved accomplishments, because I think we're starting to sense where maybe we double down or amplify some of the activity that we've prioritized. If we're seeing results, then explore why that is the case, and it starts to give us kind of breadcrumbs for the next 3 months.
Yeah, and I think one thing, sorry, my Wi-Fi is so bad, it keeps popping in and out, so I might have missed something that we said, but going back to what Kate just said, and one thing that, and Sarah, you labeled it really beautifully there, that we're helping teams essentially be given resources to learn how to set up their governance, their decision making, their mission vision, how to communicate with each other, how to express needs, how to make team agreements. But then, if I was somebody like Jeremy on the other side looking in, he would be like, well, how many teams have you actually helped successfully execute setting up their governance systems, and where are the artifacts to prove that? Because that's the stuff that's going to be like, we're going to have to quantify over the next couple of weeks, and that's the reality of it.
Okay, so it strikes me that, the audience... Sorry, Sam. Sorry. I didn't realize you hadn't finished.
Sorry. No, go ahead. But just the one thing I want to say is that keeps getting bring up is okay, if we're talking about governance and best practices, look at what Pegasus did. And there's such a strong emphasis on what Pegasus did, who were super transparent about artifacts coming out of their R&D team. And I wish we could do that for every single team and be more transparent.
Sorry, Sam.
Having their hooks set up.
Sam, and maybe your Wi-Fi is still a little bit patchy.
It is.
If Pegasus are being applauded for their transparency, what is stopping this team being fully transparent about what it's actually delivering? I'm just curious. Is there anything stopping us?
So I guess that's so.
I would say maybe just bandwidth, but none of us are 100% of the time, this is our full-time job, we all have different commitments and projects that we're working on. So for me, that's a constraint.
I think one thing that comes up for me around that is I don't think much is stopping us from that. For example, if I have more understanding of the strategic imperatives, for example, touch more teams lighter. If that is a mission, then I can change the shape of the offering if that's something that needs to happen in the next 3 months. Another one is if there's something about make the work more visible, then I can have that intention when I show up with the work. For example, when you talk about sharing breadcrumbs of work as it's happening, one thing that will be very easy to do is something along the lines of here's a piece of DNA, and it's a quote, it's a pattern, it's visual, you give it to a designer, it's got a DNA team on it, and it came from Diligence or it came from MetaMask. And publishing that as an information stream, that hits another one of the cards we had about how do we create this thing in a bit more visual way. So I think it's things and that's just 2 ideas of touch more teams lighter, or if it's a case of help a few people deepen their practice, then that's another strategy. So a couple of those kinds of strategic imperatives would be quite useful for me in thinking about the next 3 months.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. any other ideas bubble from from my question, which is what is stopping us, or why don't we just?
I think that for me, it's basically funding, right? So we've got a statement of work based on a number of hours that we're maxing out every month. And I think that it's difficult for us to then kind of step into other opportunities, like, for example, the cards around, being more present in the DNA team processes from Kate, or JV's surfacing just there about the other things that he could be doing if there was more. There were more hours available. I mean, even Mary, the amazing facilitation job you're doing now, it's like I could see so many opportunities for you to be more active in really increasing the opportunity for this team to have an impact. So, I mean, unfortunately, it's not up to Sarah or Samantha about where the funding comes from, but I think that is a real constraint that we need to think about. Because if we're going to be prioritizing, for example, JV's sense of touching more teams lightly and really building out on the artifacts and the proof points, well, that's going to hit the budget in some delivery areas, for example.
So it almost seems to me what we're sensing here is, or what I'm starting to build a picture of, is highly complex, highly dynamic, highly evolving, emerging, complex space with a change team, this team, who this work is not your full-time work. You all have day jobs. The funding and the the capability, and by that and I mean capability and capacity is probably really the word I was looking for, seems to me like it's potentially not matching the need. And so, yes. And so it's really now thinking about, well, what are our options then? Okay, so if this is our reality, how do we want to actually manage this reality? And what recommendations do we want to collectively as a team put forward to improve the likelihood of success? And where we know we are constrained, then how do we effectively manage that expectation in terms of what we can achieve as a team? Sorry, I asked multiple questions there. Would you like me to repeat them?
Where do you want us to start?
Wherever you feel like you have energy, Sam. So I guess the first question would be, I've made some statements based on what I'm hearing. It would be great to sense check whether those statements are actually even correct. Is that what you're feeling? You've been in the thick of this for 4 months. So lots of complexity, emergence, consensus 2.0.
Can I sense check that the constraints are fixed?
Constraints
tend
to be, they tend to be fixed, but I think really the question is are they real? And if they're not real, then what are the constraints?
Yeah.
Let's be clear about our constraints. Constraints aren't a bad thing. Constraints are not a bad thing. They're very necessary in a complex environment. The question is, how do we turn those constraints to our advantage and have them work for us? Sarah.
Hey, Mary, do you mind repeating what you said? There was a lot of little pieces in there. I just want to make sure I get it before we go into response.
Sure. So I guess in summary, what I'm hearing, and this is a sense check to say, is what I'm hearing correct? Is that what you feel? Does it resonate? What I'm hearing is there's a lot of complexity. It's shifting all the time. There's a lot of rapid change. It's one thing to be in a complex environment, but an environment that is rapidly changing has quite a different dynamic structure. The things that I'm hearing in terms of the constraints are funding is a constraint. As a result, capacity is a constraint. I'm hearing Sarah and Samantha, you're on a change team, but it is not your full-time job. So there's almost a sense of this work is potentially something that competes with lots of other work for your attention and for your headspace. So if that's our reality, and that's fine, if that's the reality, that's the reality. The question is, what recommendations do we want to make that reflect the reality? What support are we looking for? And what recommendations are we really what practical recommendations are we taking forward, being realistic about our reality?
I can give it a shot. So the things that I see on things to take forward. First, I was thinking of like, what are the easy, quick wins to best support the SO initiatives. One is having a focus on covering all the needs of the SO team, like especially in terms of logistics and streamlining the pipeline process. And those are fairly easy as long as we can get someone dedicated on it, who is capable of running that and committing to it. The harder piece is a pattern that I've noticed in building out this whole system of the way that we like engage with teams, whether they're in a proactive basis like with SO 101 or a reactive basis like a team needs help and they're like they need a lot of conflict resolution or something. So we've had many engagements, like and the consistent piece that we're missing is the completing the feedback loop of harvesting the learnings and bringing that back into the company. I think what Joshua said at the top of this call around, not having anyone, I'm going to mess up your words, but and you can feel free to add it in what you said, but you mentioned like having a gap of people not having the like alignment to like what they care about and what they love doing and what they're good at doing. I think we're missing that in the harvesting in the case studies. I can give multiple examples of times that we've tried to do it and it's hit the back burner. So the fact that we are not, like I can take responsibility for our team of the fact that we're not doing that. But we have so many great learnings and great data. So if we can brainstorm on how to do that better and like, an MVP of like, what does our harvesting process look like? And from from everyone here's experience, I think it could go a long way because it's a massive gap that I see.
Thanks, Sarah. That was awesome. Could I just ask one minor question? How often do you guys get together as a group to reflect?
Can you be specific on which group you're talking about, Mary?
I'm guessing the people in this room.
This is the first time we've all been together.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Thank you. So coming back to my questions, any other thoughts? What's rising for you in terms of where our where we could harness the constraints, I guess, and how we might manage expectations in the reality of where we're at.
Cool. I've got 3 ideas. One is, I think I agree that there's a whole bunch of obvious improvements to our current work that we can just pick up and do. And so I think for me, the 3 ones that came to my head were streamlining the pipeline process around promotion and enrolling. Another one was closing the feedback loop for the offerings. So I think the idea of harvesting feedback and capturing stories in a more powerful way. And the third one is convener deepening your practice offering. So having something which is a SO dojo or something else we're already doing, but we just put in place, hey, here's something you can do after the Team Foundations and SO 101. I think they're all obvious improvements that are in various phases and that we can move forward on. So that's one point of, well, it's really 3, but it's 1. And so I call that obvious improvements. I think that one thing, given the constraints that we're in, I think Susan as the main DNA point of contact makes a lot of sense to me. And that's where the high bandwidth information flows through. And that, but the idea of putting in these retros at a predictable pace, like, okay, if this happens every 3 months, that we have a more parallel communications where DNA and the delivery team sort of talk together and just learn more about each other's context. But having Susan in the middle of that mostly as an efficiency thing between those times seems to honor the constraints and has been working. And I think the idea of if we can get a clear mission to DNA, which is like, set us strategic imperatives to change the flavor of our work. Because I think that there's a lot of things we can do differently, even within the current constraints and whatnot. And it's always a case of, sure, we can do more with more budget, but it's like we can also do a lot of different stuff with the same budget. And having just a clear idea of actually, if you want, and again, coming back to the idea of touch more people lightly, make the work more visible, focus on decision making, help teams be accountable, set up governance processes, whatever the things which you think are most important at a mesh-wide level. If we can just get 3 of them in any kind of 3-month window, I like the number 3. But if we just know this is what the imperatives are, and if they change quickly, they change quickly. But that can be something that can profoundly shape the flavor of our offerings. So that'll be the third thing. DNA team to set strategic imperatives.
And I think that doesn't necessarily have to be the whole of DNA. That could be a working group within DNA, thereby just like 3 people that have opinions and are integrated, get together, take half a day or 2 hours. And also just to add agreement, Josh, but also wanting to close the feedback loop on this experiment. So for me and you in particular, and perhaps like what were we setting out to do? What was the objective? What was the experiment? Did we achieve it? What are the metrics that we can like push up now in order to say, okay, even if we do have other strategic directions, did we execute on that first kind of try and then like go from there?
Yeah, because I think for me, like one thing I'm taking away from this is I'll definitely before Christmas get out a survey to all the Team Foundation participants, just around, cool, tell me more what worked, what didn't, is there lasting change, really easy to do, something I want to do anyway to shape the evolution of that offering. And so that's one discrete action I want to pick up.
Yeah, we can do that too.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that strikes me, every time you set up a new experiment, if you don't close it and close the feedback loop and bring into and embody what it is you've learned, it's such a crying waste of energy. And so it's that discipline and that focus of constantly reviewing, are we closing the loop? Are we closing the loop? What are we bringing forward? What are we pushing behind? Getting into that rhythm as a practice rhythm. Anything else bubble up for anybody?
I mean, I think that it's important for me to always keep in mind that the SO curriculum, the SO part of DNA is only just a little part. I feel like hopefully what will happen next week at the Q1 planning session will give us more solidity, but I also don't want to imagine that we're going to get ultimate clarity on what the DNA team thinks are the best directions for the SO moving forward. I think that the DNA team has a lot of things to clear and organize. So I would just say that I think that for us, in terms of Joshua, Kate, myself as kind of the prime movers in the delivery team to be proactive and bring what we see is going to be useful.
Yeah, I actually really want to plus one that, just to say, and just sense check quickly with Sam and Sarah, is like that how you see it? Like you're gathering and harvesting insights from the mesh and what people perceive that they need, and then relying on us as kind of domain experts in some ways to provide content that either provides for that, but also like, you know, utilizes what we have in terms of expertise.
Definitely. Yeah. That's the whole.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing that the three of us need to definitely keep in mind is that we've only got a contract through April, so I think that we need to be aware of that as well, and start to put more of a focus on, maybe not more of a focus, but to think. And I guess for me, one of my needs is to get clear on whether the intention is for us to be working within the mesh in 2019. Because if it's not, then I think that we might need to shift our focus towards internal capacity building rather than delivery. So for me, that's the core kind of nut of what I need to have clear very, very soon.
Okay, so I'm going to capture that as a recommendation, which is absolute clarity on the role of the team, the Inspiral team, over the next 3, 4, 5 months. Is it train the trainer or something else? Okay, I'm conscious it's 7:53 New Zealand time. There's a little bit of tidying up to do on the board. In terms of next steps, what we really do want to do is take these recommendations and think about them as you go into planning next week, as you go back into conversations as a team. How would you like to package up the outputs of today's session? Would anybody like to take responsibility for packaging them up, or is that something that you want me to have a look at doing?
What do you mean by packaging?
I guess there are, if I look at the board now, we've captured a number of root causes, we've captured some recommendations. One of the things I would like to do is just to kind of go in and sort of tidy it up. The recommendations are not necessarily in priority order. I'm guessing they're all important. That's okay, Kate. Thank you. See you.
Sorry, thank you. Bye.
Would you like to, as a group, quickly prioritize the recommendations, or are you collectively saying these are all important, we need to actually agree who's going to take the action away? So there's two things, prioritization and action owners.
So I don't think we have time to do that in 5 minutes, Mary, is my curiosity. So yeah. I would love for you to actually prioritize and then maybe set us instructions or directions for how we can take your sense and either amend it for our needs or to bring that forward. And I think that a big part of that is also going to be sharing this, the video and the board.
Great, awesome. Okay, I will take that action.
Mary, I can support you on that. I've taken quite a lot of notes as well during the call. So
okay.
If I can help, let me know.
Awesome, that's great. Sarah, if you're happy to share your notes with everybody, and we can just put it in a link on the Trello board.
Yeah, I would love for the two of you to pair on that. That would be awesome.
Excellent. Done. Consider it done. Right then, we have 4 minutes. Let's have a checkout. Who'd like to start?
Is there a question?
What do you feel better about having participated in this call?
I can start. I feel like this was quite overdue. When the question came out, when was the last time we all sat together and talked like this? It was a long time ago, and with a slightly different group of people. So feeling good about that. I think I also feel attention being released in hearing from the group that's willing to, um, like within the budget constraints that we have, and we know like there are some uncertainties, that they're willing to change the experiments to meet with what our strategic priorities are. So I think if Susan comes with a really clear, this is what we've done into next week, and we have some more information on the state of consensus, then we'll be in the best position to help guide what those next experiments are. So thank you for being super open. I'm feeling good about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Josh, would you like to go next?
I can't put my finger on exactly what I'm feeling better about. I'm quite excited about the next phase. And it's like, and whether it's train the trainer or whether it's like go deeper or whether it's do whatever it's, I think that just the anticipation of having some clarity and like a clear mission. I've really enjoyed the mission I've been given over the last couple of months, and it's been really focused and I haven't felt really distracted. And I think the idea of having just a new mission come up, which I get in the next few weeks, which is like, cool, focus on this stuff. That's just quite exciting for me. So, and it was good to see more people, and I'd love to sort of have more time to just hang out. I'd love to know what the rhythm of these are. So if it's like, oh, we do this every 3 months or 1 month, or we do one more before April or whatever, that would just also give me a bit more, I don't know, expectation. I don't know what the word is, expectation management, comfort, something like that. That's me.
Thanks, Josh. Sam, do you want to check out?
Sure. Yeah, I think that this was really good to actually have the delivery team and everybody in one room. I feel like it is a little delayed. I would say we should even like treat this as a product and have, and even have like 15-minute stand-ups on it, if like once a week or something like that, to really kind of keep our head on the pulse of what's going on and iterate weekly if we need to, or change, I don't know. But it was fantastic to see this Trello board and everything really just clearly laid out, because it's really important to me to make sure that this next SOW that we build is really thorough and robust and high impact and clear. So it's just nice to see the ball starting to get rolling, and I want to help make sure that we get that SOW strong and act. And I've been saying this for a long time now, but I would love to see Susan and Joshua, just like the two of you in a room with Joe, just to kind of like talk about Consensus 2.0, his vision, how this work that we're doing, his perception of it, like directly. I feel so strongly about that. Joshua, I think that you and him would like click really very clearly. But I think right now is the time where we really need to push on leadership and making sure that we have the right voices in the room for the pivot of the company. And I truly believe that some of the people on this call really could speak to that. So.
That's awesome. Thank you. I love your 15 minutes once a week suggestion. I love it. Susan.
I just feel so well held. Mary, I'm going to say this, and you might not believe me, but I think this was my favorite retrospective that I've ever been part of. And I just, I'm just so grateful for what you created here. I think it's a wonderful demonstration of what's possible. And I would love to see you more involved in the mesh doing this kind of work, because I think it's like super great. I really feel a lot clearer on the invitation. I think I've felt for a while that like just feeling stuck in the middle all the time. Like, do we do this? Do we do that? Like, do we stop? Do we go? But I feel, and I really want to thank you, Sam, for encouraging, and both of you, like for encouraging, come to next week. Although I can't really quite see where there's room in the agenda, like specifically to do this. But maybe if it's even a small working group of building out the next SOW, and if Sarah and Samantha would be part of that, I think that would feel for me to be like super clarifying. Let's get to work on it, because I think that it's time, and even given the constraints of the slow down, as Joe said, it's not a stop on budget and what we need to do. I really feel like the the opportunity in times like these to build out the strength and the capacity internally is now is the right time. So I feel really good about that. So thank you. Thanks, Marie. Thanks everybody for being here. It was great.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your brain power. Thank you for your compassion. You're doing really important work, and it's really hard at times. So don't lose courage. Keep going. Keep talking to each other. That's actually the most important thing. Do set up a 15-minute check-in at least once a week, because I think you draw energy from each other. I could see you bouncing and people picking up and sort of slowing down. There's a nice breathing rhythm in this team. So use it. Use that rhythm. It's good. That is all, as Matthew Bartlett would say. Thank you.
See you
Thanks,
guys.
Have a good
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'll share the recording. Bye.
Great. Sarah, I'll catch up with you separately and we'll just try and organize some time together over the next day or two. Sweet.
Sure, I'll send you an email.
Fab. Okay.
Okay, thanks.